Hey there, Fran Sussman here from Sussman Holistic and fransussman.com. And I want to talk to you today about cravings. Cravings can drive you crazy, but what if I told you it's probably easier than you realize to get them under control? Today, I want to share with you some basic principles you need to understand in order not only to get your cravings under control, but even to eliminate them once and for all. Plus, you can use these tips to get back on track if you do give in, and once in a while, most of us do. So, here are my tips for you. First, I want you to identify and eliminate your food sensitivities. I strongly suggest you start with gluten, which honestly, I don't even consider a sensitivity at this point, since we know from so much research that it's inflammatory and causes problems for everyone. I promise you that eliminating this one food 100% will change your life and your health in more ways than you can imagine. Number 2 is to know your own kryptonite. You've got to be scrupulously honest with yourself. And if you know you can't have one, and you still tell yourself you will, it's time to get real. Hey, for me, it's corn chips. When my daughter was home, I used to pretend I was getting them for her, and then she'd have 4 and I'd eat the rest of the bag. Eventually, I just had to admit that I couldn't control myself with an open bag of corn chips, so I stopped buying them. But sometimes it's sneakier than that. Because I look at food journals every day for clients, I see how sometimes unexpected foods can set off cravings. Dairy is a common example, and here's the scenario. Someone will have a little cheese or a little yogurt, and then the next day they have more, but they also start grappling with cravings for cookies or pasta or an extra cup of coffee, all of which they'd eliminated and wanted to resist. But the resistance gets weaker, and they eventually cave. Even if it doesn't test as a food sensitivity, most of us have a trigger or two like this. And wine or alcohol is often another one, not only because it's metabolized as sugar, which I'm going to talk about in just a moment, but also because it lowers our inhibitions. And then once we give in, we start the craving cycle all over again, and that's what's so frustrating. This is biochemistry. It's not your personal character weakness, and I want you to understand that. Plus, on alcohol, it actually blocks the methylation process, and that's not good when you're trying to regain your health. Okay, number 3, let's talk a little bit about sugar. And I'm not talking just about white sugar here. I mean anything that's metabolized as sugar. So that includes most processed, packaged, and refined food products, including bread, muffins, crackers, cookies, pastas, and so forth. It also means the natural sugars, including maple syrup, sucanat, brown sugar, coconut sugar. Don't even get me started on agave, which is more like high fructose corn syrup than anything else. Definitely not healthy for you, so don't believe the hype. What's the problem with sugars? Well, they change how your brain functions, for one thing, and not in a good way. Sugars increase the function of your amygdala. That's that old lizard part of the brain in charge of fight, flight, or freeze. Not your best decision maker. It's about short-term survival, so the amygdala drives the cravings for those fast fuels like sugar because its job is to get you to safety with your life intact. And the double whammy? Sugars decrease the function of the prefrontal cortex, making it harder to override those cravings with an executive decision. So again, this is not about willpower. Once you have sugars, your biochemistry drives your choices in ways that are very hard to overcome. Of course, you can still have sweets, just make them healthy. And that has to do with both balancing your macronutrients, that's protein, carbs, and fats, and using sweeteners like stevia, xylitol, erythritol, and monk fruit that don't impact your cravings or your blood sugar. One more tip for those of you listening and saying, I don't have cravings for sugar, but maybe you like the salty, crunchy stuff. Okay, I've got some tips for you too. First of all, Make sure you're using a clean natural salt to taste. I use 3 different ones, a pink Himalayan, a Celtic gray, and a Hawaiian red. They each have a slightly different flavor and also a slightly different mineral composition. When you use a natural salt, as opposed to the chemicalized processed sodium chloride that you get at the supermarket, it has a very, very different effect on the body. My second tip is that the next time you want to crunch something, I want you to take just a few minutes, close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, and tune into how you feel in your jaw. Because often there are feelings of suppressed anger in there, and that can be, at least in part, what's driving your need to crunch. Okay, that wraps it up for part 1 of my craving tips. Next time I'm going to talk to you about some of the deeper significance of our cravings, and I hope you'll tune in for that. This is Fran Sussman from fransussman.com and Sussman Holistic, wishing you your happiest, healthiest day.